Harper fell asleep on my shoulder somewhere above Idaho, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do with my arm. That was the part nobody teaches you about being decent. Not the big moments. The small ones. The ones where a woman you met 40 minutes ago lets her guard down without meaning to, and suddenly you have to decide whether you're going to make it strange or just sit there like a normal human being. I chose to sit there. My name is Brian Morgan. I was 36 then, divorced, and honestly pretty good at making travel feel like a machine. I worked operations for a regional bookstore company in Denver, which sounded more interesting than it was. Most of my job was fixing schedules, shipments, store layouts, and problems people swore were impossible until I sent 3 emails and found the missing box in the back room. That morning, I was flying to Portland for a store opening. My whole plan was simple. Window seat. Headphones. Coffee. No extra conversation. Land. Work. Hotel. Meetings. Go home. Then Harper Wells sat down beside me. She came in late, not in a dramatic way, just fast enough that I noticed. Dark hair tucked behind one ear, cream sweater under a long coat, small suitcase lifted into the bin with more effort than she wanted anyone to see. She had a canvas tote pressed tight against her side like somebody might take it. She apologized when her coat brushed my knee. "No problem," I said, moving closer to the window. She sat down, buckled her belt, and put both hands flat on her thighs. Her fingers were steady at first, then not so steady. She stared straight ahead while everyone around us did the normal plane stuff. Bags overhead, phones out, people pretending the armrest situation wasn't personal. I would have looked away, but I saw her swallow hard when the cabin door shut. "You okay?" I asked. She turned toward me with a quick smile that was almost believable. "Yeah. Totally." I nodded like I believed her. Then the plane started pushing back from the gate, and her face changed just a little. Not much. Just enough. She took a breath through her nose and whispered, "Actually, no." I took my headphones off completely. "Take off?" She gave one short nod, embarrassed before I even said anything. "I can talk," I said. "Not about the plane. Just noise. Distracting noise." That got the tiniest smile out of her. "You're offering noise?" "I'm very good at it. Low commitment. Mostly useless." The engines got louder, and she pressed her shoulders back against the seat. So I started talking. I talked about airport coffee and how every terminal somehow sold the same muffin for $7 and still made you feel lucky to find it. I talked about boarding groups and how nobody understood them, not even the people announcing them. I told her I was convinced half the airport signs were written by people who had never walked through an airport while late. Her mouth twitched. Then, as we turned onto the runway, I told her about the giant blue horse statue outside the Denver airport. "The one with the red eyes?" she asked, still staring ahead. "That's the one. I hate that thing. Everyone hates that thing. It looks like it knows your flight got delayed before you do." She laughed once, quick and surprised, right as the plane picked up speed. It wasn't a full laugh, but it was enough. Enough for her to breathe again. Enough for her hands to stop pressing so hard into her legs. I kept talking until we were above the clouds and the seatbelt sign stayed on, but the worst part had passed. She turned her head toward me. "Thank you for not making me feel ridiculous." "You didn't look ridiculous." "I felt ridiculous." "That's different." She studied me for a second, like she was checking for a joke hidden under it. There wasn't one. "I'm Harper," she said. "Brian." "Nice to meet you, Brian." "You too." After that, we became two polite strangers in row 17. Not friends. Not anything close to that. Just two people sharing a small space with plastic cups and bad air. She asked why I was going to Portland, and I told her about the bookstore opening. She said she liked bookstores because nobody looked strange standing still in them. I said that was basically our whole business model. She smiled more easily then. But every few minutes, her hand went into her tote and touched the edge of something tucked inside a book. An envelope, I thought. Cream paper, thick, folded once. She didn't take it out. She just checked that it was there. I noticed. I didn't ask. About halfway through the flight, the plane dipped. Not a lot, but enough that drinks jumped on trays and somebody 2 rows ahead made a sharp sound. Harper's hand went to the armrest first. Then, before she could stop herself, she grabbed my sleeve. Her grip was tight. I looked at her, but I didn't make a big thing out of it. Still not in charge, I said. What? The fear. It's loud, but it's still not in charge. She held my sleeve for another few seconds while the plane bounced once more, then steadied. Her cheeks went red when she realized what she was doing. I'm sorry. You're fine. I grabbed you. I noticed. That made her breathe out something close to a laugh. She let go and folded her hands in her lap, but the energy had gone out of her. Like staying controlled had taken more from her than she had to spare. 10 minutes later, her head tipped slowly toward me. I saw it happening and still didn't move in time. Her temple landed against my shoulder. I froze. She was asleep. Really asleep. Not pretending, not resting her eyes. Her face had gone soft in a way it hadn't been while she was awake, and one hand still rested on top of that tote. I looked around like someone might hand me instructions. Nobody cared. The man across the aisle was watching a movie. A kid behind us was kicking a tray table. The flight attendant was collecting cups. So I stayed still. My coffee went cold. My shoulder started to ache. I didn't reach for my phone because it was in the pocket under the seat and moving would wake her. I didn't lean into it. I didn't turn it into some moment. I just let her sleep, because whatever had brought her onto that plane had clearly followed her all the way into row 17. When the captain announced our descent into Portland, Harper woke like somebody had called her name. She lifted her head fast. Oh my God. You're okay. I fell asleep on you. A little. Her face went bright with embarrassment. I'm so sorry. You already apologized for the sleeve. I think there's a daily limit. She pressed her fingers under her eyes and gave a small, shaky laugh. But as the plane began to lower, the fear came back. Different this time. Sharper. Not just the normal fear of landing. She looked out across me, past the window, at the gray sky and the wet ground appearing below. That was when I understood. The flight wasn't the real problem. Portland was. When we finally reached the gate, everyone stood too soon like always. Bags came down. Phones turned on. People crowded the aisle even though nobody was moving. Harper stayed seated until the row ahead cleared. Then she reached into her tote, pulled out a hotel key sleeve, and slipped it into my hand. Her fingers were cold. Inside was a folded note, written in small, careful letters. If I panic when we land, please pretend you know me. I looked up at her. She didn't explain. She just held my eyes for 1 second, then looked toward the front of the plane like the real flight was only beginning. And I knew, before I even stood up, that my quiet mechanical trip was over. Who's meeting you? I asked, keeping my voice low. Harper was standing in the aisle with her tote hooked over one shoulder and her coat folded over her arm. People were reaching over us, pulling bags down, bumping elbows, acting like the plane would leave again if they didn't get out first. She looked at the note still in my hand, then at me. My ex-fiancé, she said. That was not what I wanted to hear. I folded the note back into the hotel key sleeve and gave it to her. Derek? Her eyes moved fast to mine. I didn't say his name. No. But you looked like someone had already said it too many times. She let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not really. Yeah. Derek. The line started moving. I stepped into the aisle and took my bag from the overhead bin. She reached for hers, but I got it down first and handed it to her without making a show of it. He's not going to yell, she said as we shuffled forward. He doesn't do that. He's calm. Polite. Really good coat. Perfect voice. He says things in a way that makes everyone around him think I'm the problem. I looked ahead at the open plane door. Okay. Okay? I heard you. She seemed surprised by that, like she was used to having to explain until she ran out of air. At the jet bridge, she slowed a little. The cold Portland air came through the gap, damp and gray. I could smell rain before we even got inside the terminal. You don't have to do this, she said. I know. I mean it. You don't know me. I looked at her tote, at the envelope tucked inside the book, then back at her face. That was the note, wasn't it? She nodded once. So for the next few minutes, I said, I know you enough. We walked side by side through the terminal. Not touching. Not acting like we were something we weren't. Just close enough that anyone waiting might assume there was a reason. She kept her chin up, but I could see the effort in it. Her fingers kept finding the strap of her tote and tightening around it. At arrivals, the crowd spread out. People hugged. Drivers held signs. Kids ran around suitcases. And then Harper stopped. I didn't have to ask which one he was. Derek stood near a column in a navy coat that looked expensive without trying too hard. Dark hair, clean shave, phone in one hand. He wasn't glaring. He wasn't pacing. He looked patient, like he had been inconvenienced but planned to be graceful about it. Harper, he said. Just her name. Calm. Smooth. Like he still had a place in it. Her shoulders pulled back. Derek. His eyes moved to me, not fast, not rude. Worse than rude. Measured. And who is this? I didn't wait for Harper to invent anything. Brian. Derek gave me a small public smile. Brian. That was all. Just my name, repeated like he was putting it somewhere below him. He looked back at Harper. Kayla said you were traveling alone. Harper's throat moved. I was. Derek's eyes slid toward me again. Then Harper said, I'm not now. It cost her something. I could hear it. Derek heard it too, because his smile changed by about 1 inch. I see, he said. Can we talk privately? No. The word came out quiet, but it came out whole. Derek lowered his voice like that made him kinder. Harper, I'm not trying to embarrass you in an airport. You asked. I answered. I'm asking for 2 minutes. No. People moved around us with rolling bags and coffee cups. Nobody stopped. That was the strange thing. For Harper, this looked like a cliff. For everyone else, it was just Tuesday at arrivals. Derek turned slightly toward me. I appreciate whatever you think you're doing, but this is a personal matter. I could feel Harper tense beside me, waiting for me to argue, to puff up, to make it worse. I didn't. I don't know the whole story, I said. But I heard her say no. Derek held my eyes. You met her on a plane. That's true. So maybe you don't understand. Probably not. But I understand that word. Harper's hand loosened on her tote strap. Derek's face stayed pleasant, but something behind it cooled. Harper, this is exactly what I was worried about. You get overwhelmed, you attach yourself to the nearest person, and then later you wonder how things became complicated. She flinched. Not much, but I saw it. Then she looked at him directly. You always sound like you understand. That's the trick. His eyebrows lifted. The trick? You say it in the right voice. You make it sound gentle. But you don't listen. You wait until I stop fighting you. That was the first time I saw Derek lose control, and even then, it was tiny. His jaw moved once. His gaze dropped to the tote. Is that the envelope? Harper's hand went to it immediately. Kayla told me about it, he said. You shouldn't be handling all this alone. I'm not discussing it with you. Your mother left instructions for family, Harper. Not for some stranger from row 17. My name could have been anything right then. The important part was stranger. Harper pulled the envelope from the book. The paper was soft at the corners, like she had held it a lot before opening it. My mother left me a letter, she said. And a key. Derek's expression went still. Harper continued, stronger now, even if her voice shook around the edges. It's for her studio. Above the old flower shop on Alder. She kept the lease in her name, and she left transfer papers with the owner. I'm signing them tomorrow. Harper, Derek said, careful now, that place has been closed for years. The flower shop has. The room upstairs hasn't. You don't even live here. I might. That landed harder than anything else she had said. Before Derek could answer, another voice came from behind him. Oh, sweetheart. A woman in a camel coat stepped around the column. Elegant, silver bracelet, soft scarf, face arranged into concern. She looked at Harper the way some people look at cracked glass. Aunt Kayla. I knew before anyone said it. Harper's face changed. Derek had made her tense. Kayla made her tired. You weren't supposed to open that letter in public, Kayla said. Harper gave a small, humorless smile. I wasn't supposed to need it in public. Kayla's eyes flicked to me, then away. I was furniture to her. Temporary furniture. Honey, your mother was very emotional near the end, Kayla said. You know that. She wrote things when she was having hard days. We all wanted to protect you from making choices based on grief. Harper stood very still. I watched her hand close around the envelope, not crushing it, just holding on. No, she said. Kayla softened her voice even more. No what? No, you don't get to do that. Do what? Turn my mother's words into symptoms because they're inconvenient. For the first time, Kayla had no ready answer. Harper looked between them, Derek in his perfect coat and Kayla with her careful concern. I'm going to the studio. Tomorrow I'm signing the lease transfer. I'm not asking permission. Derek stepped half a pace forward. Harper, let's slow down. She stepped back. Not behind me. Just back. No, she said again. You always ask for quiet conversations because quiet means I stop talking. Write in the comments, was Harper right to refuse Derek's private conversation in the airport, or should she have heard him out before walking away for good? Then she looked at me. Not desperate. Not helpless. Choosing. Brian, she said, will you walk with me? I nodded. Yeah. She turned and started toward baggage claim. I followed because she had asked me to, not because she couldn't move without me. Behind us, Derek said her name once, controlled and sharp under the smoothness. Harper didn't turn around. And for the first time since I'd met her, she walked like the next step belonged to her. Outside the terminal, Portland looked like it had been rinsed clean and never fully dried. Rain misted over the curb, soft enough that nobody used umbrellas, steady enough that every coat had dark shoulders. Cars pulled up, doors opened, people leaned into trunks, and the whole place smelled like wet pavement and coffee. Harper stood beside me with her suitcase handle in one hand and the canvas tote still tight against her side. "I'm sorry," she said. I looked over at her. "For what part?" She blinked. "The plane? The note? The man in the expensive coat? The aunt who talks like a guidance counselor in a courtroom?" That surprised a laugh out of her. A real one this time, small but real. "All of it, I guess. You keep apologizing for surviving dramatic moments." She looked down at the curb. A shuttle rolled past, spraying water near our shoes. I don't know how not to. I didn't have a clean answer for that. So I didn't pretend I did. For a minute, we just stood there in the damp noise of arrivals. Behind the glass doors, I could still see people moving through baggage claim. I half expected Derek to appear again with that calm face, or Kayla with her careful hands and soft voice. Harper seemed to expect it too. She pulled the brass key from the envelope and held it in her palm. It was old, darker around the edges, tied with a thin piece of blue ribbon. Not fancy. Not something from a movie. Just a key that had clearly sat in a drawer for a long time waiting for the right hand. "I know this is a lot," she said. "And you probably have somewhere to be. I have a hotel and a store opening tomorrow. The hotel isn't going anywhere." She turned the key over with her thumb. "Would it be insane if I asked you to walk with me to the studio?" "No. I don't need you to pretend anymore. I know. She looked toward the street, where rain blurred the headlights. "I don't want to see it alone." That felt different. Cleaner, somehow. Not the note. Not the panic. Just a direct ask. "Then I'll walk with you," I said. She nodded once, like she didn't trust herself to say thank you without apologizing again. We took the light rail into the city, standing near the doors because neither of us seemed ready to sit. Harper held the pole with one hand and the tote with the other. Every time the train stopped, she glanced out like Portland might change its mind and send her back. She gave me the address when we got off. The old flower shop was on a narrow street with small restaurants, a bike repair place, and a closed antique store with dusty lamps in the window. The flower shop had a faded sign that read Mariel's, though half the gold paint was gone. The front windows were fogged from the inside, empty buckets stacked against one wall. Beside it was a green door. Harper stopped in front of it. "This is it," she said. The key shook a little in her hand, but she didn't hand it to me. I was glad for that. She unlocked the door herself. Inside, the stairwell was narrow and dim. It smelled like old wood, dust, and rain trapped in coats. The steps complained under our shoes. At the top was a blue door with chipped paint around the handle. Harper stood there for a long moment. Then she opened it. The studio was small. One wide window facing the street. Wood floors scratched by years of chair legs and easels. A deep sink stained with old paint. Shelves along one wall, a work table near the center, canvases stacked under a white sheet that had gone gray with dust. Nothing about it was grand. But Harper's face changed when she stepped inside. Not fixed. Not happy exactly. More like a person hearing her own name after a long time of being called something else. She set her suitcase by the wall and moved slowly, touching the edge of the table, the sink, the windowsill. I stayed near the door. "You can come in," she said, noticing. "I am in." "You're standing like a delivery guy." "I'm trying not to be in the middle of something that isn't mine." She looked at me then, and the room got quiet in a way that had nothing to do with silence. "That's new," she said. I didn't know what to do with that, so I gave her a small nod. She crossed to the covered canvases and pulled the sheet back. Dust lifted into the air. Underneath were paintings in different sizes, some finished, some rough, some barely started. Bright flowers on a dark table. A woman's hands holding a blue mug. A rainy street. A messy kitchen. A little girl in a yellow raincoat under a blue umbrella. Harper stopped at that one. "Oh," she whispered. She lifted it carefully and leaned it against the wall where the window light could catch it. The little girl in the painting had dark hair and serious eyes. Harper's eyes. "My mother painted this when I was 7, she said. I remember the coat. I hated the buttons." She gave a shaky laugh, then pressed her fingers to her mouth. Behind the frame, something slipped and tapped against the floor. Harper bent down and picked up another envelope. This one had her name on it. Her face went pale. I took one step back toward the door. "I'll give you space." "No," she said quickly, then softer, "just stay. Please. But don't read over my shoulder." "I won't." She opened the envelope with care, like the paper itself could bruise. Her eyes moved across the page. Once. Then again, slower. I watched the rain slide down the window and listened to traffic below. I didn't need to know every word. I only needed to be there if she looked up. After a while, she did. She said she was happiest in rooms nobody else understood, Harper said. Her voice was uneven but clear. She said people will call you confused when they're afraid you're becoming clear. She looked back at the letter. And she said my life doesn't need approval before it can begin. The room seemed to hold that sentence. Harper walked to the window and pushed it open. It stuck at first, then gave way with a wooden groan. Cold rain air came in, carrying the smell of the street and old leaves. She breathed it in like she had been waiting years for that exact air. Then she turned to me. "Thank you for not turning this into a rescue." I shook my head. "You were already leaving." "I just walked in the same direction." She stared at me for a second, and I could tell that line landed somewhere deeper than I meant it to. She didn't move toward me. I didn't move toward her. But something between us settled into place. The next morning, she went to sign the lease transfer. I walked with her to the building office, then stayed outside with 2 coffees getting cold in a cardboard tray. She had offered to let me come in. I said no. Some rooms you should enter alone. 28 minutes later, she came out holding a small ring of keys. Her eyes were tired. Her hair was damp from the rain. But her shoulders looked different. She lifted the keys a little, like she still didn't believe they were real. "I own a studio," she said. "Yeah, you do. And I might paint again." I handed her one of the coffees. She took it, smiled down at the keys, and for the first time since row 17, Harper looked less like someone bracing for what came next and more like someone choosing it. That afternoon, Harper came to the bookstore opening. I almost didn't recognize her at first, not because she looked different, but because she was standing still without looking like she was waiting for something bad to happen. She was near the front display with one of our cheap paper cups in her hand, the kind of coffee we served at events and apologized for without replacing. Her hair was tucked behind one ear, her coat was open, and the canvas tote was still with her, but she wasn't gripping it like a lifeline anymore. I was supposed to be checking the signing table, making sure the local author had enough pens, and pretending the front register system wasn't one bad click from freezing. Instead, I looked across the store and saw Harper by a stack of new hardcovers, watching a little girl point at a dragon book. "You came," I said when I reached her. She looked up. "You said you'd be here." I did. That was a fact I wanted to walk toward. I had no smooth answer for that. I just stood there like a man who had spent years being practical and had suddenly misplaced the habit. She lifted the cup. "Your event coffee is terrible. That's how you know we're authentic." She smiled, and something in my chest went quiet. We didn't make the afternoon into more than it was. I worked. She wandered the aisles. Once, I saw her talking to an older woman about art books. Another time, she stood near the window, phone in her hand, staring at the screen without answering. After the opening, when the store had emptied and the staff were stacking chairs, I found her outside under the awning. "Derek?" I asked. She nodded. "Twice." "You answer?" "No." That one word sounded different now. Still small, but steady. We had dinner at a ramen place 3 blocks away, tucked between a laundromat and a bar with fogged windows. Rain ran down the glass beside our booth. Steam rose from our bowls, and neither of us talked about destiny or timing or any of the things people say when they want a strange day to sound prettier than it was. We called it not a date. That helped for about 10 minutes. Then Harper reached across the table to slide the soy sauce toward me, and her fingers brushed mine. It was barely anything. A small contact, gone almost as soon as it happened. But neither of us pretended we didn't notice. She looked down into her bowl. "I'm not ready to make a mess of someone else's life. My life has already survived delayed shipments, divorce paperwork, and a holiday display falling on a regional director. That sounds serious." It was emotionally serious for the cardboard reindeer. She laughed, and I liked that I was starting to know the shape of it. The quick one when she was surprised. The softer one when she trusted the room a little. Over the next week, Derek called again. Harper didn't answer. Kayla sent long polished messages that started with concern and ended somewhere close to control. Harper showed me one of them, then put the phone face down on the studio work table. "What do you want to say?" I asked. She thought about it for a long time. Then she typed one message. "I'm safe. I'm staying. I'll call when I'm ready, not when I'm pressured." She sent it before she could rewrite herself into something smaller. Then she blocked Derek. 2 weeks later, I flew back to Portland for a follow-up meeting at the store. This time, when I came down the escalator at Arrivals, Harper was waiting near the same kind of crowd, the same rolling bags, the same bright signs. But she wasn't pale. She wasn't bracing. She saw me, smiled, and walked straight over. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Then she kissed my cheek. It was quick. Warm. Not a performance. Not a promise too big for the moment. Still, I thought about it all the way to the hotel. After that, I found reasons to come back. Real reasons at first. Store visits. Vendor meetings. Training. Then smaller ones. A weekend. A Saturday morning. A dinner. A walk through the market when Harper bought pears and forgot she didn't own a fruit bowl. She painted again. Not all at once. Some days she just moved old canvases around and called it work. Some days she sat on the floor with music playing and stared at one blank canvas for an hour. But then colors started showing up on her hands. Blue near her thumb. Yellow at her wrist. Green on the cuff of a sweater she claimed was already ruined. The studio became less dusty. She scrubbed the sink. Hung lights. Found 2 chairs that didn't match and declared them perfect. She kept her mother's painting of the girl in the yellow raincoat by the window. 6 months after that flight, I asked for a transfer to Portland. Harper was careful when I told her. "Brian. I'm not moving because you need me to." "I know. But are you moving because of me?" I leaned back against the studio table and looked around the room that had somehow become familiar. "Partly. But not only." She waited. "My stable life in Denver wasn't stable anymore," I said. "It was just still. I think I'd been calling that peace because it was easier." She came over and stood in front of me. "And Portland?" "Portland has rain, worse traffic than people admit, and a store that needs help." And you?" She smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. I can live with being one reason. You're a good one. A year after the flight, Harper opened the studio on Saturday afternoons. Nothing fancy. No big sign. Just the green door propped open when the weather allowed it, and a chalkboard downstairs that said Open Studio upstairs. Local artists came by with sketchbooks. Neighborhood kids sat at the worktable and drew dogs with wings and houses with 20 windows. Harper painted by the wide window, sometimes teaching, sometimes just listening. I brought coffee from the bookstore when she forgot lunch, which was often. 2 years after row 17, I noticed the note. It was framed on the studio wall near the blue door. The hotel key sleeve was behind glass too, flattened carefully. The handwriting was still small and tight. If I panic when we land, please pretend you know me. Under it, Harper had written another line. He did. Then he stayed long enough to actually know me. I stood there reading it longer than I meant to. Harper came up beside me, wiping paint from her fingers with a rag. Too much? No, I said. Just true. 3 years after the flight, we got married in that studio above the flower shop. Rain tapped the window. The wood floors still creaked. The sink still had old paint stains no amount of scrubbing could remove. Harper carried the brass key in her bouquet, tied with the same blue ribbon her mother had used. When people asked how we met, Harper said, I fell asleep on his shoulder. And I said, she handed me a note that ruined my travel schedule. Both were true. But the real truth was quieter than that. We started by pretending I knew her. Then I stayed, and she let me. And somewhere between the airport, the green door, the bad coffee, and all those rainy Saturdays, pretending turned into the easiest truth I'd ever lived.